one-party rule ever since the independence of Singapore. Most people in the West would say that for a really active, successful democracy, you need a powerful opposition that has the very real prospect of winning power, but you don't have that.
Is democracy only real when it's messy? For decades, the West has criticised Singapore as not being a true democracy. They say it's too controlled, too one-sided. A country where a single party, the People's Action Party, has ruled for over 60 years. But here's the twist. While the West celebrates political competition, it's often this very competition that paralyses their governments. When governments gridlock, when parliaments argue endlessly, and little gets done, is that democracy working? This question became especially relevant after the 2025 US government shutdown. One of the world's oldest and proudest democracies literally came to a halt, prompting a provocative question. Could Singapore's more managed approach actually be more effective? In this video, we look at the US government shutdown and how even a free and fair democracy can stall. We'll explore what this reveals about democratic legitimacy and why Singapore's model might offer a smarter way to govern. Let's start with the criticism. Western analysts and media have long portrayed Singapore as a managed democracy, a system where elections happen, but power never changes hands. Since independence, the People's Action Party has won every election and maintained a dominant majority in Parliament. Opposition parties exist, but they've never come close to forming a government. To many in the West, Singapore's stability is often seen as a flaw rather than a strength. That's because the Western conception of democracy is deeply rooted in the idea of competition, that power must regularly change hands, that open disagreement is a sign of vitality, and that a healthy system thrives on checks, balances, and constant political contest. In this view, frequent turnover and vigorous opposition are not signs of dysfunction, but safeguards against authoritarianism. To Western observers, a democracy without loud debate or shifting leadership appears incomplete, even if it functions effectively. Now, let's look at the other side. The United States, often hailed as the model of true democracy. With two dominant parties, the Democrats and the Republicans, the US political landscape is marked by fierce competition and open debate. By Western benchmarks, this visible contest of ideas and power represents the hallmark of a healthy democracy, evidence that the system is functioning as designed. Yet on 1 October 2025, this system reached a breaking point. The US government entered its longest shutdown in its history, bringing much of Washington to a standstill for more than a month. Congress couldn't agree on a budget. Republicans and Democrats refused to compromise. And because of that standoff, the world's richest country effectively stopped functioning. Hundreds of thousands of federal workers were furloughed or forced to work without pay. Government departments closed. National parks, museums, and research centers ground to a halt. And the economy bled billions of dollars each week. Analysts estimated that the shutdown could reduce the US GDP by 2% in the last quarter of 2025. Airlines cancelled flight. Food inspections stopped. Even food assistance to millions of people were delayed. And all this, not because the system was broken, but because it was too democratic, too divided, too partisan. The shutdown wasn't caused by dictatorship or corruption. It was the byproduct of endless political competition. Each side was more focused on winning the fight than keeping the country running. That's the uncomfortable truth. Sometimes the price of Western-style democracy is paralysis. This isn't just an American problem. It's part of a broader crisis facing many Western democracies. Across Europe, political paralysis has become a defining feature of governance. In Britain, Brexit exposed deep fractures not just amongst citizens, but within the political establishment itself. For years, Parliament was locked in deadlock as parties splintered, prime ministers resigned, and crucial votes failed repeatedly. The world watched as one of history's oldest parliamentary systems struggled to carry out the will of its people, revealing how fierce partisanship and intra-party rebellion can immobilize even the strongest institutions. In Italy, instability has become almost a national tradition. Since World War II, the country has seen more than 60 different governments, an average lifespan of just over a year each. Coalition collapses, shifting alliances, and constant political bargaining have made it difficult to sustain long-term economic or social policies. The result is a democracy that is vibrant but volatile, where political competition thrives, yet consistent governance often falters. And in Germany, once a pillar of post-war stability, coalition politics have grown increasingly strained. The so-called Traffic Light Alliance, made up of the Social Democrats, Greens, and Free Democrats, collapsed in 2024 because of disputes over budgetary policies. At the same time, the rise of populist parties such as the Alternative for Germany has fragmented the political landscape, making it harder to build consensus. What was once Germany's strength, its culture of compromise, is now being stretched to its limits. These examples reveal a deeper tension within modern democracies. They were built on the belief that debate, dissent, and competition are essential to freedom, and indeed, they are. But when competition turns into perpetual conflict, it can paralyze the system itself. Governments struggle to make decisions, vital reforms are delayed, and the people lose faith in the institutions meant to serve them. The irony is that while the West often criticizes Singapore for being too stable or too controlled, many of its own democracies are suffering precisely because they cannot maintain stability. In their pursuit of open competition, they have sometimes created systems that prioritize political survival over national progress. A reminder that democracy is not just about having many voices, but about ensuring those voices can come together to govern effectively. So, what makes Singapore different? How does a tiny island of 6 million people manage to avoid the chaos that grips far larger democracies? The answer lies in its political DNA. Singapore's system prioritizes governance over gridlock. It emphasizes long-term planning over short-term popularity, and it balances strong leadership with a structured, transparent electoral process. Elections in Singapore are regular, free, and competitive. All citizens over 21 have the right to vote, and opposition parties are allowed to contest seats nationwide. There are no barriers preventing new parties from forming or campaigning. Constituencies are drawn transparently, and election results are independently audited, ensuring that the process is fair and legitimate. Transparency extends beyond the ballot box. Parliamentary debates, where policies are scrutinised and ministers are questioned, are broadcast on national television and streamed online, allowing citizens to witness how decisions are made and leaders are held accountable. This open access reinforces public trust and demonstrates that Singapore's political process operates in full view of its people. While the People's Action Party has maintained a dominant position for decades, its continued victories reflect broad public support rather than systemic suppression. Citizens have repeatedly reaffirmed their trust in the government through free elections, a clear demonstration that the system is democratic in both principle and practice. And because the ruling party has maintained continuity for decades, it can plan policies across generations, not just election cycles. Take housing. More than 80% of Singaporeans live in government-built flats, a policy that began in the 1960s and continues today. Or the Central Provident Fund, a mandatory savings system that ensures citizens have funds for healthcare and retirement. Or the education system, which transformed a resource-poor island into one of the world's top economies. These policies didn't happen by accident. They were designed and executed by a government that didn't have to fight constant political battles just to stay alive. Unlike the West, which often equates democracy with rivalry and contestation, Singapore measures legitimacy through results, stable leadership, and policies that work. This continuity of leadership allows for consistent, long-term policymaking, something many Western democracies admire but rarely achieve. Of course, Singapore's model isn't without its trade-offs. The government maintains a strong role in shaping political and media landscapes with an emphasis on stability and social cohesion. Opposition parties and civil groups operate within structured parameters, a framework aimed at preserving harmony in a diverse society. But Singaporeans understand the trade-off. They exchange some political noise for stability, safety, and predictability. In return, they get a highly efficient government, world-class infrastructure, and one of the highest standards of living in the world. It's a social contract built not on slogans, but on results. And in a world where even advanced democracies can't agree on a budget, that kind of reliability has real value. So here's the real question. Should democracy be judged only by how loudly people argue, or by how well the system works for its citizens? In the Western imagination, democracy means constant change. But in Singapore's context, democracy can also mean steady progress. It's not about having political parties shouting at each other. It's about ensuring that policies actually get implemented. In fact, Singapore's success challenges a deeply held Western belief that without intense competition, power will always corrupt. Yet in Singapore, corruption is practically non-existent. According to Transparency International, it consistently ranks among the top 10 least corrupt countries in the world, higher than the United States, Britain, and France. That alone should make critics pause. Because if the goal of democracy is good governance, accountability, and fairness, then Singapore has achieved those outcomes better than many full democracies. The US shutdown exposed the other side of the democratic coin. It showed how partisan rivalry can turn self-destructive, how democracy can eat itself from within. It's not the first time either. Government shutdowns have become almost routine in Washington. In the last 4 decades, they've happened 15 times. Each one disrupts lives, wastes money, and erodes public confidence. Compare that to Singapore, where political stability has allowed for uninterrupted governance, disciplined budgeting, and fast crisis response. From the Asian financial crisis to the COVID-19 pandemic. When the world shut down in 2020, Singapore acted swiftly. It rolled out wage support, digital tracing, and emergency relief in weeks. There was no partisan bickering, no stalling over budgets, no shutdown. Because in Singapore, the system is designed to function, not to fight itself. That's not to say every country should copy Singapore's model. Its small size, culture, and history make it unique. But it does challenge the assumption that the Western model is the only legitimate one. So the next time critics call Singapore undemocratic because the same party keeps winning, remember the US shutdown. Remember the endless partisan fights that disrupted the lives of millions of Americans. And ask yourself, which system really serves its people better? The 2025 shutdown didn't just expose the weakness of American politics. It proved that the Western view of democracy, as noisy, divided, and forever competitive, isn't the only valid one. Singapore's story shows another possibility: that a nation can be democratic, stable, and effective all at once. And in a world increasingly torn by division, that may be the kind of democracy the world needs to understand better. But the truth is, much of Singapore's success is credited to its founding Prime Minister, Lee Kuan Yew, a leader who faced relentless criticism from the West for his so-called strong-handed style of governance. Yet, time and again, he defended Singapore's model with clarity and conviction. One of the most memorable moments came during a BBC Hard Talk interview, where Lee confronted Western assumptions about Singapore's governance head-on, and emerged with his trademark composure and intellect. What exactly was he asked, and how did he turn the argument in Singapore's favour? Watch this video to uncover the full story.